Welcome to the Ascension Path with Twin Essence. I'm Lacey.
And I'm Marley, and we're your Starseed Lightworker and Psychic Medium hosts.
We're identical twins with spiritual abilities and Starseed missions on Earth. On the Ascension Path, we discuss what it's like to be identical twins serving in a spiritual capacity and provide insights into our work as Starseeds. We create a sacred space to receive channeled messages, intuitive teachings, and expansive conversations that elevate your frequency and support your evolution. Join us to learn about navigating the path to Ascension and becoming the most authentic, aligned version of you. Take what resonates and leave the rest. We are digging into one of the most anticipated topics and most requested topics for our podcast. We're talking all about Reptilian and Draconian star beings. What is the reptilian agenda? Is it real? Is it a myth? All sorts of questions that have been submitted to us on this specific topic, and we're channeling and diving into our knowledge and experience on all of those things. We are completely switching it up, and we are moving to the negative side of the polarity spectrum. So when we talk about draconian beings and reptilian beings, we are moving to that negative side of the spectrum. Contrary to most of the other beings we've talked about thus far, have been more towards that positive side of the spectrum, of course, working towards integration. And, I think that these reptilian and draconians get quite the negative rep. If you even go on Google and type it in, you're going to get a whole slew of mix and match responses, including blogs, articles about like why draconians are the bad star seeds, and like all this information that's very different out there. It's basically like conspiracy theory city. Oh, 100%. I remember watching a documentary episode that was about different paranormal mysteries, and there was an entire episode dedicated to reptilians and this belief in reptilians, what people thought of them, and a particular incident in which an individual, I guess, kind of went crazy over reptilians and did some bad things. But yeah, it's a very, very commonly misconstrued and misunderstood topic. And I think today will be very enlightening for those who know about what's all out there on the internet and those who don't, because man, the TikToks are just all out there with different conspiracies and different theories on reptilians and the agenda and what's really going on. So draconian beings and reptilian beings come from the same constellation. At least when we connect with them, that's where we find their origins. They are connected to that Draco constellation, Draco being that dragon figure. And it makes sense, right? When we talk about draconians, of course, they're going to come from Draco. Of course, draconians often come with dragon imagery and a dragon type of energy. Whereas reptilians kind of appear as a hybrid or offshoot, almost like a different race, if that's the word I'd say, coming from Draco as well. And reptilians come with more of that lizard imagery. So closely connected to dragons, but a little bit different. Yes, and Draco, not to be confused with Draco Malfoy from Harry Potter. I know it's really tough to remember that, but but the Draco constellation holds at least these two types of star beings, probably more depending on which star you're looking at in the actual constellation, because it is a dragon or serpent constellation. But yeah, we get that lizard reptilian look, or we get the dragon draconian look. And I would say we kind of feel that energetically, and that's kind of how we discern them as well. Yes, but I had to say this too, even coming through with that Draco Malfoy reference, like Slytherin in Harry Potter, we see Slytherin as, it's associated with like snakes, obviously, quite literally, but we see it as that like negative side of the Hogwarts houses. Like we view it as, well, people who are in House Slytherin tend to be, on the negative polarity spectrum. They tend to be self-serving, they tend to be about power, and they tend to be like associated with Death Eaters in the series. So I think it's interesting because that's a 3D reference coming through that shows us It supports and shows us how Draconian and Reptilians are associated with that self-serving negative side of the spectrum. And as Lacey just pointed out too, with the differences in their energy, we always talk about how star beings come through with color to us. And I think it's interesting because draconian beings and reptilians, I feel like they don't come through with color for us. It's like they come through with that dragon or that lizard imagery, and it's almost like texture. Like their energy is like a texture, where we have draconians being more of that like flat-skinned, like rough but flat-skinned, like dragon type. Um, like I don't know why, but the reference to like a tortoise like that
Mm.
kind of skin comes through versus the reptilian side. It typically comes through as like bumpy and spiky and like very, very, very rough. And like that's how I feel them energetically too. Now, closely, I think related. I think it can be hard to discern them if you're not familiar with their energies, but we have connected with draconian star seeds before in sessions. Yes, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions with reptilian and draconian star beings is that they are automatically always very, very negative beings that are doing awful, terrible things. That's just not true. You can meet any kind of star being and they can be on a different end of the polarity spectrum. And what is good and bad, right? We always talk about that. But draconians, I would say we actually meet more draconians than we do reptilians. Yes, I agree. I think part of that, which I'm sure we'll get into, I think that draconians, it's like those starseeds are more outward facing on Earth and owning it, versus reptilians tend to be more mysterious. I think reptilians tend to be more under the wire. They're very elusive, and the word camouflage is what's
Yeah.
coming up. They know how to hide themselves a lot better and operate in like in a level of undercover incognito. That's what's coming through for me. That's a better word. But again, there's the camouflage. That's like the chameleon, the lizard reference coming through again. I will say when we talk about colors, I do typically get green or black for them. Not in a creepy or dark or scary way. That's just the colors that I associate with them. How about we start by digging into this topic of power dynamics with reptilians and draconians? Because I can definitely say from experience, I have met more draconian starseeds who are in positions of power than not. Yes, absolutely. I think it relates so much to the negative side of polarity because that is self-serving, because it does make those decisions for the self. And oftentimes that looks like power, that looks like leadership. It can look like control. It doesn't have to be, and I want to make it clear that doesn't mean that it's necessarily like a objectively negative thing, because good and bad, right? They're subjective terms. So I don't mean it to sound like it's a bad thing, like that the control, the power, the leadership is bad, but they're self-serving, right? So they're going to take what's theirs. They're going to make decisions from themselves. They're moving from me. They're not moving from us, we. That's the best way it comes through. Yeah, they don't have that same unity consciousness belief system that they subscribe to. And I think that's a really good point that you're making, Marley, because making decisions based on self doesn't necessarily mean that they are making decisions with this intent to harm and not care for people. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're evil. They lean more towards the negative polarity spectrum, but it doesn't mean they're bad, so to speak. It just means their belief system is very different from other beings and they have a more self-centered approach to it. Yes. And I think that's something too, like we've talked about this before, but Ascension is about that integration point. On this spectrum of polarity, we have negative and we have positive, and we're trying to integrate. We're trying to reach this point of integration across the collective and within ourselves, right? So it's balancing the decisions we're making for the whole and the decisions we're making for ourselves. You can't be 100% positive and neglect the self. You can't be 100% for the self and neglect the whole, the collective. So from an ascension perspective and an integration perspective, we see this opposite side of the spectrum, the negative being, the self-serving, just choosing themselves. And how can they experience challenges in this human incarnation that forces them to continue to look towards the group to try to reach more of a balance and a point of integration. I think that is why so many draconian or reptilian beings being in leadership get that bad rep of like, they're causing harm. They want Earth to hurt. They want humanity to hurt. When in reality, no, they're just choosing themselves and moving from a place of themselves. And in doing so, maybe it causes harm to others. Maybe it's neglecting the whole, right? It most likely is. But that is the growth edge and challenge for their design, their incarnation. They have to try to do things to create an integration point within themselves on that. We've met many draconians that are actually starseeds on Earth that are more trapped in the Matrix than you would actually think. Yes, yes. And that's, I think, what surprises us and probably surprises a lot of people out there is they think there's this huge negative agenda of like causing harm to humanity. And in reality, it's like, no, they're just choosing themselves. And they're a lot of times they're very, very stuck in 3D matrix linear thought processes of how to do things. How can I accomplish my goals? And in fact, how the information's coming through right now too is that reptilian star seeds, they don't always even know that they're reptilian. Yes, they are very unaware of their own lineage. And in fact, up until now, I'm sure this would change, but we haven't had really any interactions with a reptilian star seed. But I know there are people out there who identify as like a reptilian hybrid with a different being. So we know it's possible. We just haven't really encountered that. It's almost like they haven't awakened fully. And I think that can again go back to like the collective ascension process of who's in power, who's controlling communication and media for the collective, right? And oftentimes those in power tend to be more on that negative side of the polarity spectrum. Oftentimes we do see draconians and reptilians in power, and it's almost like they're not fully awakened or not fully aware of their multidimensionality, of like what exists around them and outside of them and through them, like what that embodiment looks like for them. The main takeaway with this is that reptilians and draconian starseeds are not all negative. There are positively polarized ones that are currently existing on Earth, and you will see far more media and TikToks and videos made about the negative side of these beings rather than looking at it from an objective point of view. Yes. And again, it's not harm. It's actually not that they want to cause harm to Earth, humanity, or I wouldn't even say they want to cause harm to other beings. It's perception and perspective. Because from their perspective and perception, they're just making decisions and they're co-creating their reality. They might not even realize they're co-creating their reality, but they're just making decisions from what do I want right now? What do I desire? Whereas on the positive end of the spectrum, a lot of other star seeds are out there and they're thinking not necessarily just about what do I desire, but they're thinking about like, what are the repercussions for my actions? Is this helping the whole? How am I going to move us forward as a group? How am I going to achieve my mission and purpose? Like, honestly, there doesn't have to be this bad view of causing harm. It's all perception and perspective. I think that's a really, really good point. And I just want to talk a little bit more about the leadership part of this. Um, because they are not, how do I say this? In the clearest way I can say this is not all leaders and public figures are reptilians and draconians. That's just not accurate. And that is exactly what I'm receiving right now in terms of information. Not every leader is reptilian, not every leader is draconian. And there is this somewhat spiritually toxic belief system that is permeating and rapidly spreading throughout the world. That's what's going on with anyone who is in a position of power, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, there are star seeds out there all the time. I mean, we just channeled Hathor star beings, right? That are always going to be natural born leaders and in positions of leadership. So that right there proves that not all of leadership out there in the world is going to be a negative polarity or draconian or reptilian. I think the other widespread part of that conspiracy is that anybody in a position of government power is immediately a negative polarity, a draconian, or a reptilian. And I don't think that's true at all. I think that, yes, there probably are those types of lineages or origins within those matrix structures, those 3D structures, but I don't think that's not true for the whole of every government across the world. And so it's a couple of things with this leadership topic, because there are individuals who believe that, like, let's just say, like, these reptilians are infiltrating a particular group of people and then they're like taking over. For example, I remember reading and hearing something about the royal family being reptilian and someone saying like, oh, Princess Diana knew they were all reptilian and like they infiltrated the royal family and took them over. And that's not an accurate perception of what these beings do and who they are. Well, we've said 100 times already that reptilians can lean more towards the negative end. That doesn't mean they all are. And just to give you a little bit of perspective on this, do you think it's harder to be positive and all love and sunshine, or do you think it's harder to be more negative and selfish and doing these hard things? Because we know that people and humans learn through contrast and duality, right? You can't just only live a positive life or you're never going to learn anything. You're never going to grow and evolve as a soul and as a human being on Earth. So, really, reptilians, you could even argue, have one of the most important jobs for Earth's ascension right now because they are helping a lot of people grow through contrast. Yes. The other thing coming through is like with that royal family example, this is a great, I think, example of this. Again, it's like a government structure we're seeing, and we're seeing the general assumption of this label being put on them, like you must be reptilian if you're a part of that structure or organization. And what really comes through is the level of awareness around your multidimensionality. If you are asleep, you are not aware of your multidimensionality, you are not aware of your co-creation, um, you are likely going to be very limited in your thought processes to only the 3D level. So you think that everything you touch, feel, smell, or taste is all that exists. That's all that there is out there. That is the matrix, right? So you are under the guise of that matrix. So it's not necessarily that you're reptilian in your negative polarity. Perhaps you're just not awakened, right? Perhaps those individuals aren't awakened fully yet, and they're not aware of their multidimensionality yet, and they haven't even begun to uh, move through their integration process with conscious awareness. That's why connecting to your cosmic lineage or starseed lineage is so important too, because it connects you to that multidimensionality. It helps you understand the specific challenges that you will go through in your incarnation and what your mission and purpose is here, what you're actually trying to do on Earth. If we were able to connect a reptilian star seed to their actual mission and purpose, it would probably greatly shed light on what they're doing on Earth and why they're doing it on Earth. Now, if it's a reptilian star seed that is here to do something that is in a position of power that maybe is considered more negative, then they're probably not going to connect to their starseed origins because that would impact the mission. That's exactly it. It's like the conscious awareness or unconsciousness of this. Like, it's less about pointing a finger at a specific lineage and saying, you're doing this and it makes me feel this way. And it's more about recognizing that there's different levels and paths in a human incarnation on the ascension path. Some who are going to be very much awakened and consciously aware, some who are not. And they might not ever be consciously aware in this lifetime. And as Lacey pointed out, that might be because of their mission and purpose. They might not be able to awaken in this lifetime to it, because if they did, it could cause the mission to fail. It could cause the plan to go wrong, and they might not be able to accomplish what they need to accomplish in providing contrast or providing leadership or making changes that affect a whole group of people in order to push them forward, right? Like so much of what we see on a collective scale right now, the destruction, the pain happening, while it can be very difficult, it's also pushing the group forward to this new level as a collective on the ascension path. We want to move you, the listener slash viewer, out of this perception and belief system that it is us against them. It's us against these negative beings. Or I'm on this end, I'm on this side, I'm on the right team. Because it's really not about taking sides of one or the other in this polarity spectrum or dualistic reality. It's actually about understanding and looking at the big picture of how these different ends of the spectrum can create ascension on Earth and how they're actually working together to create a bigger change on Earth right now. Because it would never work for Earth to be fully run by a negative race of beings that are selfish and power hungry. That would never actually work. Like, that's not going to get Earth to ascend. That's not going to get souls to keep incarnating. They're not going to learn things. It's purely like a cyclical broken cycle. It wouldn't go anywhere. Like, there would be no purpose in that. And the same goes for the positive end. If everything was rainbows and sunshine and everybody got along and nothing ever happened, well,
There'd
that
be
wouldn't.
no integration, no return to source.
No, and the whole bigger picture that we're trying to communicate here is zoom out, look at that bigger picture and understand the integration and how you get back to source. You don't get back to source from doing it one way, right? No one way is the right way. You do it by understanding and experiencing and integrating both. And it's moving from this place of, like Lacey talked about, choosing sides, or like I think of it like intolerance for each other's views. Integration is the balance, the meeting of the two. If we're going to say there's two, right, versus viewing it from a unity perspective, but it's about integrating, accepting, balancing, and understanding. That's what's truly going to create that return to source. I actually would even argue that if there is a reality that exists in which everything is rainbows and sunshine, we would already be back to source because we'd be at an integration point. It would be harmonic resonance, and we would all be back to unity consciousness at one with source. Yes, exactly. Like, we wouldn't even know about that reality because we would have already returned to source, right? Because the whole thing we would have accepted, we would have integrated, boop, boop, all of us go back. We're all good with each other. Who cares, right? But that's not the reality on Earth, right? We're not experiencing that on Earth. We're trying to move forward as a collective to create that ascension path. And part of that is about the acceptance and viewing it from a place of unity, viewing us as a we, stop pointing fingers, stop thinking you're on the right side, stop thinking there's sides, period. Outside of awakening. Like, I think if you had to pick a side, quote unquote, to be a part of, it's the side of awakening, the side of awareness of your multidimensionality, the side that moves you forward on your mission, allows you to embody your highest potential timeline as it relates to your own personal incarnation and the collective group. And I think the other thing that I want to say that's coming through is there are people who are going to focus very much on all of the wrong and the bad that is being unleashed and happening in the world. And this is not meant to take away from justice or empathy for victims or people who are going through difficult times or anything like that. But it's merely a call to ask you to look at things in a different way and understand how they are actually serving the greater collective and whole. We should get into celebrities now. Yes, absolutely. That's kind of the next piece of this. So we have the power and leadership and the conspiracies behind government structures, the conspiracies behind causing harm on Earth. The other thing is this connection to celebrities and the topic of cloning, because draconian and reptilian beings are often associated with cloning, often associated with celebrities. And it does relate a little bit to that power piece again, because oftentimes as humans, we associate fame with success and fame and mass influence. And that is often associated with money and power as well. Prestige, entitlement, uh, you can become untouchable, right? Untouchable from any kind of repercussions. You can do whatever you want. It's the old like money can buy you happiness, but really money can buy you a lot of security and safety and elitism. I would say unstoppable, unbreakable, like all these like things that go along with those terms and phrases. And this theory of, are humans being cloned right now? I laugh saying it because, it sounds crazy. The cloning conversation, oftentimes it's pointed at celebrities, and that's because celebrities are famous, right? They're mainstream, they're in the media, everyone knows their face, everyone knows who they are. So it's easy to point at them and say, Zac Efron looks different now than he did 2 years ago, right? Like it's easier versus like a random human, not everyone's gonna be able to point to and say, I see a difference and they've changed. But it's this cloning concept of are celebrities being cloned? Like I give the Zac Efron example because so many people talk about Zac Efron with cloning. It's the same with Miley Cyrus. They're always
And
like talking about her looks changing too. Yes, and in reality, it's like okay, like Zac Efron literally broke his jaw and it had to be reconstructed. Like, I'm like, I could that be why his face changed physically? Um, but when Lacey and I talk about this and the cloning concept, there's a lot of fear in the collective about it. It's told from this place of fear of like, they're doing this to people. And it's almost like non-consensual. They're cloning, they're making more of them, and like they're using cloning to control people. It's this very negative, fearful energy it comes from. And a lot of times the individuals they're pointing to that are celebrities and saying, like, here's evidence of why we think so and so was cloned, it's a lot of just perception and energetics, I think. I mean, Marley's my clone, right? I was born first and I cloned myself and created Marley. From like a scientific perspective, I'm just kidding. I'm just making that joke because we're twins. The thing is that even now in channeling on this episode and information from reptilians and draconians, I have never received information on cloning. I've never been shown a cloning facility because, how do I say this? And how it's coming through. There is no point to cloning someone. Because if they wanted to be in a position of power with a particular person, they would be. Like, they're not hijacking some other Starseed's journey to make a clone of them and do some ulterior motive. And if they are, that soul would have already been ejected from the body at that point because the mission failed and they would have ejected them and exited the lifetime. Most likely. Not only does this, like, belief system just not make any sense to the two of us, but it's just never been how we're channeling it. Even right now, like there wouldn't be a purpose for them to do that. Like they're not beings that are just taking over bodies on Earth. And this is not going to get into individuals who are supposedly viewing cloning facilities, remote viewing them, or being told that people and souls are signing certain contracts. We're not going to get into any of that because that's not really part of how we're receiving the information. But the real thing with cloning that I think needs to be more publicly made clear is it's about energetic frequency and your levels that you reach. I hate saying the word levels because it makes it sound like a video game where it's like
sounds linear.
it does. It's like you passed level 10 and now you get to look gorgeous and be famous. I mean, that's exactly what I was saying. No, it's really more about perception and energetics because as you co-create your reality, as you move through an ascension process, like we've talked about physical symptoms, right? With ascension. And part of physical symptoms is that your appearance could change. Like, but it's also an energetic piece because you could have this whole new energy that you are emitting, and somebody could connect with you and just be like, wow, there's just something's different about you. Everything's changed about you. And it's like, yeah, that's because my whole frequency has changed. Like, so I just think that that is where the physical appearance can change as well. And when we see it in celebrities, like, I do think there are some famous individuals that are living in their highest potential timeline. And so I think their appearances have evolved. And I'm not talking about it from like a plastic surgery perspective, but but it's almost like when they're truly, truly, truly living in that highest timeline of themselves, it's like they're outside of time. And when they're outside of time, they're not aging or their appearance changes. And I think that people then start to judge that and point to that and they try to use that as a fear thing, talking about cloning. And in reality, it's like, well, how do you not know the person's frequency hasn't just shifted over time? Exactly. Like this is just people not understanding quantum leaps and manifestation and frequency shifts because when you continue to move into your highest timeline, your looks are going to change. There are tons of manifestation coaches out there who will show you before and after
Yes,
pictures
exactly.
of like when they made it big and hit success. And it's
Quote,
not,
quote unquote big.
well, yeah, but it's not about like money and physical, like it's alignment. Yeah,
It's literally alignment.
it's not like they're having surgery done to look better. It's quite literally changing their timeline and frequency has changed the way they physically look to the world, as it should. And that's what people need to accept and realize. It's not, "Oh, look at this person's a robot now." That's not what this is. And that's not how we've received the information. Now, of course, one day that could change, right? We could change our perception on it as we receive different information. But this is where we stand on this cloning topic right now. It's something that is being used to create more fear of spiritual topics in the spiritual space and outside of that. It's a form of like spiritual toxicity in terms of like how it's controlling people in a spiritual environment because it's actually really similar to people who are terrified of connecting to star beings because they think it's demonic and it's going to lie to them on what it actually is. Well, no, when you're connected to your power and your inner knowing, you should be able to discern what kind of being it is. And if you believe in dark beings, maybe that's what you're going to attract. And the other piece of that is, again, it goes back to that perception and how conscious or unconscious one might be of their multidimensionality, of their mission and purpose. Because if you're not aware of it at all and you're stuck in the 3D only, you think that's all that exists out there, you're in the matrix, then of course when somebody starts talking about star beings, you're going to get freaked out and you're going to get scared. It's because that doesn't fit into the matrix. That doesn't fit into your what you know. And the 3D is consistent in what you know, right? So that makes sense. And then the other piece to the energetics and the physical appearance too is to Lacey's point with like living in that different timeline, like and how it changes how you look and the manifestation coaches out there who show those before and after photos. Like when you're living in alignment and your highest potential timeline, you're only in a frequency of love, joy, happiness. Imagine how different you would be if you never were connecting to fear. If you were never connecting to those lower frequency control mechanisms or those lower frequencies that constantly put you back into old programming. Like you would totally evolve energetically and I think physically as well. That is ascension. Ascension is evolution, as Lacey and I always say. Yeah, I mean, less wrinkles, your hair wouldn't gray, you would sleep a lot better, you'd be fully hydrated. Like thinking about all those things that go into it. I also want to talk really quick about the remote viewers and the cloning facilities. I'm glad you're bringing it back to that. 'Cause I was gonna say I need to bring it back to that for a minute. I can't let it go. Um, I the reason I want to bring it up again is because one thing that they brought through, and Lacey and I don't remote view. I am not saying that, as Lacey said, this is what we are receiving right now and what we believe right now. Now, if we receive information from a star being in the future and it changes our perspective, so be it. But this is what we feel and know as a truth right now. And when it comes to remote viewers and these cloning facilities, the only thing that really comes up as a channel is the Zeta Reticuli and the Zeta Reticuli and how they do genetic experiments on humans. And I wonder if truly a cloning facility is being accessed or if it's not just the genetic experiments that the Zetas are currently doing as it relates to human DNA and galactic DNA. I see Starbeam DNA. And so I think there could be confusion there. Or maybe they're tapping in and they're not fully able to discern who the being is in that room and what the purpose of that space is and what's going on in that room. Because when Lacey and I connect to Zetas, like Zetas are not how do I say this? Zetas don't like shut you out. That's the best way I can say it. Like they're not going to be like, this is classified, leave this space, person remote viewing. Like that's not a Zeta's personality. Like I feel like Zetas would just be like, we're just doing our thing, and like you popped into the room like, okay, like we're in the lab doing our work. I think that's a really, really, really good point because it's possible that the Zetas are just doing their genetic experiments and maybe they're trying to replicate somebody with genetics, but it's not like Zetas aren't like abducting you from your body and being like, and now we're gonna put a Zeta in your place. Like that's just no, that's not what's happening. The other thing with this, with the reports that other people are picking up, is that I think I need to make clear is that they probably have a very, very different purpose and mission than what Marley and I do. And with our mission and purpose, we are really here to activate humanity's remembrance and connect them to their multidimensionality and truth. And it's not about, how do I say this? While a lot of our work can look like we're debunking or disrupting the matrix, our purpose isn't about disrupting the matrix specifically. It's what I said, activate humanity's remembrance and connect them to their multidimensionality, and where it goes from there with disclosing the truth behind humanity's origins. It's not now activating humanity's remembrance is going to inadvertently, like indirectly, probably disrupt the matrix, but that's not like how we would ever communicate our mission and purpose. And I think that some of the individuals that view these things or report on seeing this stuff and experiencing it, it's not wrong. It's just part of their mission and purpose and what they see as truth in the reality that they're living in and creating in. It could also be a challenge on their path too. So I want to point that out too, because we don't know, right? We don't know what their mission and purpose are. We don't know what they're doing here. But maybe, that could be part of it, that they have to bring this forward for the group. It could also be part of it that that's a challenge for them that they have to work through. Like, are they going to give in to the fear behind a cloning facility, if it does exist, if that is existing for a negative purpose? And how it's being communicated right now is that belief system and thought process is contributing to a lot of fear in the spiritual space, and it is going to close people off from reaching a level of ascension that they could be reaching had they not been consuming that kind of information. Yes. I I still go back to, the remote viewing of these facilities and what do they actually know about it? Because, the other piece I want to add to this, the message coming through about the Zetas and the genetic experimenting, and maybe the people remote viewing can't discern that, is that the cloning message always comes from a frequency of fear and control. And we know that Zetas are often associated with fear, and Zetas have a purpose with that fear. That fear is used to help humanity awaken, help humanity remember. So I just think that there's the purpose to everything, but I think that the frequency of fear and what the Zetas are doing could be completely overriding then when people are like tapping into that facility and they're immediately like, it's cloning and it's for this reason. So I just think that's something that could be considered. One last thing that I want to dispel as well is this concept that reptilians and draconians are killing humans and they hate Earth. No, no, not true. Not true in how the information comes through to us. There is no one specific type of being that is responsible for harming Earth and getting rid of humans. Okay? Now, there are the negative polarity beings, but that doesn't mean that they're here to like cause mass destruction. And that doesn't mean that they're here to dominate Earth. It's like I said earlier, what would be the purpose in that? What kind of planet would exist? What would you actually get out of that? You wouldn't get anything. Like it would reach a point of like stalemate. Yeah, I mean, the concept of like they're existing to kill or purposely cause harm to humanity, we talked about this earlier, it's not that, it's just decisions for themselves. When you see pain and suffering and things that are happening on Earth and you think, oh my God, why is this happening on Earth? How could we exist here? If there are people behind those actions, they're likely just moving from a place of self. It's not a place of, I want to actively cause harm. It's just, this action I am doing makes me feel good right now and I desire it. And it's not our place to say what's right or wrong. Again, integration. How do we balance it? How do we understand it and reach that point of acceptance? That's really what Ascension is about. There's not one way. We always talk about this. It's not that when we ascend, there's never going to be any negative emotions, pain, or suffering happening. That's not Ascension. Ascension is that integration and returning to Source. Source is everything everywhere all at once. The full spectrum. All of it. We need all of it to ascend and integrate. So we advise you to use caution when watching and consuming videos in which individuals are reporting these very, very negative perceptions and beliefs about these beings or what's unfolding and what it actually means for Earth. It might be a version of the truth, it might be their truth, but how does it sit with you and whether it resonates with you is more important. And draconian and reptilian star beings are not bad. They are a denser energy, maybe. They're a little bit darker, more on the shadow side, but they're not bad. So when you come into contact with these beings, try to keep an open mind and again, zoom out and get that bigger picture so that you can see their role just like you have your own role you're playing. And if you can, when you can move to a place of acceptance and understanding, that's ultimately where you want to be. Yes, if we can have you walk away with one thing, it is understanding the role that these beings are actually playing and how it actually is working with the other beings, and it's creating this beautiful contrast in which Earth is being put in the pressure cooker to ascend and raise the vibration of those that are inhabiting its planet for the greater whole and to get closer to integration and going back to source, as we said.